Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're tackling something you guys specifically requested. That explosive Vance-Walz debate. Seems like everyone's talking about it, but we're going to go deeper than the headlines.
Absolutely. These debates, they're often more about sound bites than substance, right?
Totally. But there are real policy discussions buried in there, and you guys wanted us to unearth those. Especially on those hot-button issues, right? Immigration, climate change, abortion.
And those are the ones where fact-checking is absolutely crucial.
For sure. So, should we just dive right in?
Let's do it.
Okay, immigration. Vance, he did not mince words. Stop the bleeding, he said, talking about the border. Called for deporting criminal migrants. Strong stuff.
It was certainly attention-grabbing. And then there was that bit about children being used as drug mules.
Oh, right. Was there any truth to that?
Not that we could find. Look, it's a tactic, right? Use emotionally charged language. Make it hit harder. But we got to separate that from actual policy. Like when he said Kamala Harris is the border czar.
Yeah, as if she's down there, personally building the wall?
Exactly. And that position, it doesn't even exist. Harris focused on root causes of migration, poverty, violence, things like that in Central America, not border enforcement itself.
Which brings us to that whole Springfield, Ohio controversy. Remember that? Vance and Trump, they made those claims about Haitian immigrants there. Turned out to be totally false.
And Walz called him out on it right there on the stage, accused Vance of using these stories to demonize immigrants.
And Vance's response was...
Yeah.
What? That he was concerned about the people of Springfield because of Harris's open border policies?
Which, as we've established, isn't really accurate on multiple levels. First off, Harris wasn't in charge of border security. And second, most of the Haitians in Springfield. Legally there. Asylum seekers, work visas, they built lives there.
Which kind of highlights how dangerous misinformation can be, you know, especially with something as complex as immigration. Easy to get swept up in the rhetoric.
Absolutely. Real people, real lives being impacted by this stuff. And it ties into another area where we saw a huge contrast. Climate change.
Oh, yeah. Walz was praising the Inflation Reduction Act, which, for anyone who needs a refresher, is that big bill pouring money into clean energy, cutting emissions, that whole thing.
Right. And he went after Trump pretty hard for calling climate change a hoax. Even brought up Hurricane Helene as an example of, how extreme weather is becoming more common.
Meanwhile, Vance's response felt a little thin on specifics. Clean air, clean water. Investing in American workers. Sounds good, but...
Vague, right. And he completely dodged the question about whether he agrees with Trump's whole hoax thing. What I found interesting was his suggestion that if we just produce more energy, that'll solve the environmental problem.
So, just crank it up and everything will sort itself out.
That seems to be the gist, yeah. But it's just not that simple. It's not just about how MSCH energy, it's how we produce it, what we do with it. That's where specifics matter.
And that's where policy specifics, the actual details, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly. And this wasn't the only time Vance's responses were a little light on specifics. Remember when abortion came up?
Oh, yeah. Walz didn't shy away from that one at all. Very directly defending his pro-choice stance. Pushing back on that criticism Trump's leveled at him before. And he made a point of saying that Minnesota, they actually put abortion rights into law, officially, after Roe v. Wade got overturned. Then he brought up that Project 2025 thing.
Yeah, that raised some eyebrows for sure.
Yeah.
Basically, think of Project 2025 as a playbook, right? Anti-abortion groups put it together, and it lays out their strategy for restricting abortion access as much as possible, maybe even banning it outright. Walz says, and some other reporting backs this up, that this plan, it includes this idea of a national pregnancy registry.
Whoa. Like keeping tabs on who's pregnant and who isn't?
That's how some people see it, yeah, as a way to, monitor women's reproductive choices. And it's not just abortion. Project 2025, they want to limit contraception, too, and even some infertility treatments. It's a whole big thing.
So bigger than just Roe v. Wade even, a total reshaping of how we think about reproductive rights.
Exactly. And that's what makes Vance's stance so interesting, right? Because he said during the debate very clearly, I have never supported a national abortion ban, which on the surface sounds moderate, right? But then you got to remember some of his past statements and it gets kind of murky. He supported those federal heartbeat bills before, and those would basically ban abortion at around 6 weeks.
Which is, before most women even know they're pregnant.
Exactly. So is that a national ban, or isn't it? And then you've got the fact that he admitted Ohio voters, they support abortion rights, a position he disagrees with. It's who's he trying to appeal to here? Tough to say.
A good question. And speaking of appealing to voters, I thought it was really interesting how each candidate dealt with the economy, leadership, that whole thing. Like when Walz went after Trump's taxes.
Oh, yeah, he did not hold back on that one. That was a very direct contrast he was drawing there between how much regular people pay in taxes and, what he was implying about Trump's own dealings.
Right, right. And that idea, economic fairness, that really seems to resonate these days.
Yeah.
But then Vance, he countered by saying basically that Trump's policies were great for everyday Americans, and it's the Democrats who are holding everyone back.
Classic case of, two completely different stories about the same set of facts.
It's wild, right? Because they're both trying to say, hey, I'm the one fighting for the working class.
Mm-hmm.
But their solutions are like polar opposites.
And their whole vibe, too. Walz, he had that air of experience, like a leader who's actually gotten things done. Vance, on the other hand, it felt more like he was playing to his base, tapping into that, fiery energy we talked about earlier.
It's tricky, though, right? Do you try to be everyone's candidate, or do you fire up the people who are already on your side?
It's a tough call. High risk, high reward, either way. But we got to remember, this deep dive, it's not about style points, right? It's about substance.
Yeah.
And there was that one thing with Walz, his comment on opioid deaths, that seemed a little off.
Yeah, it seemed like he was saying that crisis was basically over, which isn't really true.
Right. There's been some improvements. Yeah, deaths are down a bit, but it's way more complicated than that. Can't just pin it on one policy or another. It's a whole web of factors.
For sure. Progress is good, but got to be honest about where things stand, too, Especially with something as serious as opioid addiction.
Absolutely. Speaking of honesty, what about Vance's whole transformation from never Trumper to, Trump's biggest fan? That's quite the journey.
It really is. He even admitted it during the debate. Straight up said he was wrong about Trump.
That makes you wonder.
About his judgment.
Yeah. If he misjudged Trump that badly, what else could he be wrong about?
It's a valid question. Yeah. And it gets at something we've been talking about all along, right? Yeah. Looking beyond the surface, questioning the narratives, digging into the facts, because that's how we make good decisions. Exactly. It's easy to get caught up in the heat of the moment, Yeah. The emotions, the rhetoric. But we got to go deeper than that. And that's what we try to do here.
Absolutely. These debates, they're a starting point. They give you a taste of where these candidates stand. But it's never the whole story.
It's like a trailer for the movie. You get a feel for it, but you got to see the whole thing to really know.
Exactly. And you, the listener, you're the one who has to fill in those gaps. Do your own research. Ask the tough questions. Whose vision for the future resonates with you? What are your non-negotiables?
What qualities are you looking for in a leader? Experience. Bold ideas, someone who's going to stick to the facts. Those are the things that matter. And hopefully this deep dive has given you some things to think about, some tools to use as you navigate this whole election season. Because at the end of the day,
your vote is your voice. Don't waste it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, everybody, that's a wrap on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back soon with another one, so stay tuned.